look, it's me. It's an honor to be here today, share my perspective on how entrepreneurship and technology intersect with the 2016 economic forecast. Just a quick poll, how many of you consider yourself entrepreneurs? And technology industry? All right, so I'm going to talk about something that these other brighter minds are probably not going to talk about, and that's the trends of entrepreneurship and technology in Texas, but also more specifically in our regional ecosystem. I want to start with a quick recap of some trends that we've seen in Texas as a whole. So none of this is a surprise to anybody, but it's very relevant to the conversation of technology and what's going to be happening in the coming years. We're declining in age, we're increasing in our numbers of seniors. We're home to 4 of the fastest top 10 growing cities in the nation: Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, and I don't know if you heard last week, Houston's about to eclipse Chicago as number 3. So we have an explosive population. In the next 5 to 10 years, 35% of that population will be over the age of 50. That is a lot of aging people. So there's no denying that we are in the midst of a huge population shift and demographic change in our city. Now, I know that's not new news, but when you tie it to some of the trends I've seen in the last 23 years, to be precise, 23 years this month, in the beginning of the commercialization of the internet to now, there's also some pretty profound changes. The internet has changed how businesses are funded. It's changed how they're built. It's certainly changed how they're operating, and we've all experienced that. But in the last 10 years, what has shifted is that you can start a company, a tech company, on less than $1 million in funding, and that's caused a massive shift in traditional financing models. So there's 470 million people globally that identify as an entrepreneur. They self-identify as an entrepreneur. That represents 300 million startups. That's a lot. It's half of them are tech startups, so about 1.35 million. So there's 1.35 million tech startups in the global economy. I think it's safe to say entrepreneurship has arrived. It is possibly overblown. We have Mark Zuckerberg as, the rock star of unicorns, and we have Mark Cuban as the celebrity investor extraordinaire. So entrepreneurship has certainly hit prime time. But it's not all rainbows and unicorns for tech startups. It's tough. So while it might be really cost efficient right now to go pursue your dream as an entrepreneur, it's actually still very expensive to run the entire race. And something I like to remind people of is, despite how prevalent the internet seems today, it's still in its infancy. Maybe it's awkward teenage years at best, but it's still early days. E-commerce actually only accounts for 7.2% of retail sales. So my point about that is that there is enormous room for growth still in the internet sector. And my expectation is that this growth will continue. It will continue to grow strong in the coming years. And as a result of that, communities like Austin will continue to be challenged for resources, both human resources and financial resources. When you look at, despite our local booming economy and really what I would consider a sea of opportunity globally for startups, startups have a staggering failure rate of 90%. 90% fail before they ever see their first round of funding. The ones left standing, the 10% left standing, 60% of them fail between their first and second rounds of financing. 50% that make it that far fail between their second and third rounds. So I think entrepreneurs are crazy. We can all agree to that. But entrepreneurs keep entrepreneuring and investors keep investing. And I don't see that changing. Quite frankly, what I've witnessed in this boom economy, this is my favorite picture, actually. How apropos is that? The big birds of venture capitalists, the little birds of entrepreneurs. So what I've witnessed that's unique to the last 5 years, and this is a trend that I think is worth calling out, is that in the boom times, everyone seems to be kind of vying for their place at the table a little bit earlier in the ecosystem and the company lifecycle. And generally speaking, in the last 5 years, the terms of investment deals have gotten very entrepreneur friendly. Another big trend that seems obvious, but accelerators have exploded worldwide. 6 years ago when we started Capital Factory, we were the only game in town. There's over 1,000 accelerator programs globally now servicing the demands of these startups. So everyone's trying to figure out how to do this entrepreneurship thing, bigger, better, faster, smarter, and I don't think that's going to stop. And so why am I harping on that? And what's its relevance to an economic summit? Austin is uniquely positioned at this convergence of an explosive technology ecosystem, an innovation ecosystem, and an explosive population growth and change. And I think that's a huge opportunity. There's no doubt it's probably also a big problem, but since I'm an optimistic entrepreneur, I will call it a probertunity if everyone in here promises not to tweet that I said that word. So, we're the fastest growing city in the nation. We're on every top 10 list, good, bad, or otherwise, and we're at the center of this great opportunity. Like all Austin goodness, we're keeping it weird even with our probertunities. Austin is #1 in the nation for startup density per capita. I mean, #1 in the nation. That's amazing. But we only have 114 deals. Now, this is not all deals. These are deals that are identifiable. But for the sake of normalizing the data set, Austin has 114 deals a year representing about $600 million in capital that gets invested in our ecosystem. Compare that to Silicon Valley, which is 3rd in the nation for startup density per capita. Anybody know #2? Miami. Silicon Valley is 3rd in the nation for startup density per capita, but has 10 times as many deals as Austin. 48 times as much investment capital. They have $24 billion of venture capital and investment money in their ecosystem. So, I think Austin's going to be pushed to focus its entrepreneurial and tech resources and its investment resources, and I'll get to more of this in a minute. That brings me kind of to the key take-home points from this. Bottom line, we're definitely going to see continued growth of the startup ecosystem. I'd venture to say, regardless of whether the economy is good, bad, or flat. In bad times, entrepreneurs start companies to create their own jobs. In good times, entrepreneurs start companies to pursue their dreams of changing their lives and the lives of people they love. But perhaps more importantly is the forthcoming millennial population. There'll be 75% of the workforce by, I believe it's 2020, if not shortly thereafter. And while they don't vote at the polls, they vote with their lifestyles. And this generation loves working for startups. So if you're working for free, what do you care if the economy's good or bad? You work for a startup. So I think we're going to continue to see startups innovate, which is a wonderful thing. With that, I think we'll see a follow of investment capital from outside our region into this ecosystem. I think we'll see more venture capital money coming in. I think we'll continue to see growing companies come to Austin to pursue their dreams of expanding and to take advantage of the talent pool and the fact that, quite frankly, our deals on average are about half as expensive as deals in Silicon Valley or even deals in Denver, which is an interesting ecosystem. So I think perhaps the most profound thing I can raise everybody's awareness about is I think in 2016, Austin is going to see, actually I would probably say Texas, is going to see, particularly the technology sector, is going to be asked to help with the burden that our growth is creating on the healthcare and education ecosystems. This explosive growth, there's not enough public money to solve that problem. And so I think we're going to lean on the private sector. I think the private sector's got a hungry group of people that want to solve, a young group of people who want to solve problems related to civic innovation. So they say necessity is the mother of invention. I think Austin is about to be bombarded with necessity, and it's a really good thing we have some inventors around. So I'll make the bold claim that I actually think Austin will begin to emerge next year and in the coming few years as a national center of excellence for healthcare technology and education technology. It's a profound opportunity for us. So I'll talk quickly about those two sectors, and then I want to close with my thoughts on what success in that ecosystem might look like. Why education technology? Why do I think about that? It's 15% of national spending, and Monet can correct me if I'm wrong. It's a big number. We can debate the specifics, but 15%. Did you know that one student dropping out costs $387,000 in the course of their lifetime as they move through juvenile justice, adult justice, and welfare systems? You want to move the needle? Those are some expensive numbers right there. So what do I see for education technology in the immediate future? I see it helping us understand the connection between learning and physical activity and education. I see it helping us optimize the environments for learning. These will mostly be wearable technologies and Internet of Things technologies in the immediate future. I do see that sector growing. But with the new research that's come out, the modern neurocognitive research, that we can actually change the brain and the intelligence of a human being, I think we're going to see technology really focus on things like expanded memory capacity, helping teach problem solving, and helping to teach high intensity problem solving. A lot of these, Khan Academy and Singularity University and Leonardo Academy, these new alternative learning styles will continue to see more investment and more success. Obviously, I think the total model for education includes traditional education. I'm not at all saying it doesn't, but the multimodal approach and a definite shift towards money in education technology. Healthcare technology, why am I bullish on it? Let's start with the fact that it's a $3 trillion industry, 21% of GDP. So, everything's big in Texas. Let's solve the two biggest problems of national spending at healthcare and education. But 86% of healthcare costs are chronic pain or chronic care, high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes. These are things that technology can actually facilitate. And since we've seen the first major policy change in the United States since Medicare, the Affordable Care Act, regardless of your opinion about it, has disrupted healthcare. It's introduced choice into healthcare, choice in insurance providers, choice in facilities and who you get your care from. And that trend is going to continue. I think we're in the early stages of that. Politics aside, there's no doubt healthcare is going to be massively disrupted. It's archaic in its use of technology, and I would bet on that all day long. 4 key areas that I see for Texas in particular: telemedicine. Telemedicine is not dead. There's an article today in the Texas Lawyer, I think is a magazine. It's long debated whether or not telemedicine is dead in Texas. It is not dead. It is the only way to get service to the rural populations that don't have doctors, which is a big problem for us. So I believe telemedicine, patient engagement. So when you introduce choice into healthcare, now you've got to satisfy the patient because they're the choosers. So anything that relates to patient engagement, creation of content, creation of community, create a better user experience, those companies in the immediate future will continue to thrive. Data science, absolutely. It's in its infancy with regard to healthcare. It's been very focused on the payor environment. I think we'll see a shift to that in the patient satisfaction environment. And then, it's not super sexy, but any advances in fraud identification, prevention, centralized administration, security, centralized billing, they're small, but they're big game changers in healthcare. And I think companies in that sector will continue to be rewarded. So in closing, I want to recognize that these are 2 huge sectors, and they're both ripe for disruption. They're, at least in banking, you can do a mobile deposit. I still can't email my healthcare provider. So let's just say they are archaic, but I don't think success looks like a unicorn. There's a big debate in my community about whether Silicon Valley and the unicorn model is where we should be, and I'm going to throw down and say no. I think playing a leading role in the disruption of either of these economies will create jobs, It will create new revenue streams that are good for our economy, will positively impact spending. But perhaps the most significant forecast that I can give you is that I think Austin's near future will be small incremental changes that collectively accomplish greatness. And that's in keeping with our spirit as a community as well. So bet on the small horses, don't bet on the unicorns, and healthcare and education technology.